Welcome to the Megalithomania podcast. Today we're joined by Stuart Mason. Now, he has just published a book about the Long Man of Wilmington and the mysteries associated with that, focused really on the archaeoastronomy relating to the site. Now, Stuart has been involved with Megalithomania since the very beginning. In fact, Stuart was the first person to ever buy a ticket for the first ever Megalithomania back in 2006. And that's where we first met him at the conference. And a year later, he actually spoke at the conference about his studies on archaeoastronomy. But even straight after the conference, at that time, 20 years ago, this was the era of the extreme point of the moon cycle, the 18.6-year moon cycle. And we actually drove up to Kalanish with a whole bunch of other people. Some we'll talk about, during this interview, and actually witnessed the Sleeping Beauty and the moon rolling across it above the stones and with the mountains in the background. It was a hell of an experience. And that was just after we kind of first met. This happened in early June 2006. Since then, Stuart set up the Antiquarian Society, which he ran for many years, focusing on the studies of archaeoastronomy and related phenomena. He was also the founder and organizer of the Out of the Ordinary Festival, which was an Earth Mysteries festival, which took place in Sussex for several summers, which I was involved with. There was many very great speakers turned up to that, like Robert Bouval, John Michel, John Neal, and many others. And since then, he's been traveling a lot. He's been living in Australia and even on Fiji and other parts of the South Pacific, where he's been studying the cosmology of the cultures there. And at the 2026 Megalithomania conference, this is where he launched his new book called The Long Man of Wilmington Decoded, Britain's Stonehenge of the East. And we're going to get into some of that. We're also going to get into the fundamentals of archaeoastronomy, which is also known as astroarchaeology. A new modern term that Fabio Silva's created is skyscape archaeology. So there's different approaches, but basically we're looking at how these megalithic sites, these other ancient sites and earthworks relate to the night sky and how the ancients built them according to certain principles. So welcome, Stuart. Thanks for joining us on here.
Hugh, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here on your podcast. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of the latest discoveries we've found here in Sussex with your audience.
Because you've been since I've known you, you've been very focused on archaeoastronomy. This is your kind of thing. You're well versed in all the technical details of how it works. You obviously use stellarium, but also you use some of the old school techniques as well. Like you created this kind of almost like a piece of paper, which you laminated, and you would be able to, and it show you all the orientations of all the different movements of the sun and moon over the year. I used this as well, during some of my early research into astronomy and so forth. So give us a bit of a background on, what is archaeoastronomy and, what got you into it as well.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. Yeah, let's just break down that word because it sounds scary. Archaeoastronomy, but actually archaeo, the ancient world, and astronomy. So how the ancients may have viewed the heavens. And primarily they were interested in the sun and the moon and the movements of the sun and the moon. There are planets that are noted here and there and some star constellations, which we might look at later. But primarily the movements of the sun and the moon. And I think I just wanted to share with your audience the kind of importance of realizing these two cycles and really understanding what is the summer solstice, what is the winter solstice, what is the equinox, and then you break that down further into what we in the Celtic countries would say the Celtic wheel of the year. where we break it down into an eightfold point, which we can look at later. And these dates were very, very interested by the ancient people. They were obsessed with these, and I think it's really important to get a real firm grasp in your own mind as to how these two celestial bodies, the sun and the moon, actually work.
We've got my local site like Stonehenge, famous for its summer solstice, sunrise alignment. And more recently, the other end, like the repeat of the cycle we witnessed at Kalanish was actually taking place again, like a year or so ago. And we actually have Dr. Fabio Silva, who was part of Megalithic 2026, who kind of talked a lot about this and about this whole movement of the moon and the way the station stones connect. So a lot of people just think it's just the sun, but it's actually a lot more going on than that. So maybe we could get into, some of the details about that. And you got some images you want to share as well. We could get that open and start having a look. Okay, so what are we looking at here, Mr. Mason?
Well, Mr. Newman, we are looking at a graphic that's showing us the summer solstice, winter solstice, the autumnal equinox, and the vernal equinox. So to continue this conversation, we just all need to be crystal clear on what exactly is going on. Now, on the left of this image, you can see a number that says 23.5 degrees. And that is determining the tilt of the Earth. Now, because of that tilt on the axis of the Earth, that means that we are at a slant to the sun. So as the Earth goes around the sun, a different surface is exposed to it. So in the northern hemisphere, around December the 21st to 22nd, we have the shortest day, but the longest nights. And then in the complete opposite of that, if you look over to the right, you'll see June the 20th to the 22nd, summer solstice, when we have the complete opposite effect happen. We have the longest days, but the shortest nights. It's a complete reversal. And then March and September, the autumnal equinox and the vernal equinox. If we just break down that word, equinox, that's actually Latin, and it's equal night. So what that's saying is, at this time of the year, daylight hour and nighttime hours are equal. And these four key dates are critical to know and understand if you want to be an archaeoastronomer. And it's not that difficult. We were never really taught anything like this at school. It's kind of occulted from our, mainstream education. And yet it's profoundly important. And ancient people and people for millennia have been not only obsessed with knowing when these dates occur, but have marked them, as we both well know, in stone all over the world as a kind of signpost to us today to say, look at this. This is really, really important. This system now that you're looking at controls the weather. It controls food production. It's partially responsible for tides and so on. It is a major, major part of our lives. And fully understanding the solstices, the equinoxes, is critical for having an understanding of archaeoastronomy and today in the world. This is current today. This isn't something necessarily that is just in the past, Hugh. This is something which I, encourage people today to look at and get involved with.
Archaeoastronomy, a lot of people, the brain turns off. It's just too much to take in. You got the whole movements, everything's in 3D, moving around you in all directions. So Can you give like a bit more of an explanation of, or maybe some
Yeah,
examples, so it gives
yeah,
people a
yeah,
clue
yeah.
about the subject?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Right. Let's take it from the ground up. So, as I said, the solstices, and we'll just break down that word as well, because the clues are hidden in the words, yeah? The solstice. Sol, sun. Stis, standstill. It's from the Latin, okay? So it literally means the sun standing still. So when you observe the sun around this time of year, and you observe its rise point and its set point, it doesn't really move much on the horizon. It kind of just stays exactly where it is, which is why we call it the sun standstill. I mean, that is literally what the word means, okay? So let's say we've got that. The solstices, the sun stands still. The equinoxes is equal day, equal night, okay? We'll just move on one more slide and we'll break it down a bit more. Okay, so what we're looking at now is the cross quarter days. Now, these cross quarter days are simply days of the year when we break down the four that we've just been talking about, and then we just literally cut them in half again and divide them into 8. Right? Now, this is the orbit that our planet Earth is on, and we are continuously, as we go round 1 year, as you get 1 year older and you go round to your birthday, you are part of this. Whether you know it or not, you are part of this, right? And all of these different points, there's 8 of them, refer to what we'll call as an astronomical midpoint, which is halfway between the solstice and the equinox. Okay? So, for example, right now, we're in the period of around what we'll call Beltane, which in the Northern Hemisphere happens on May the 1st. In the ancient world, it would have been a holiday that carried on from May the 1st until May the 5th or May the 7th. The holiday, unfortunately, what we have lost is 7 days of partying, as opposed to today. We just have the 1 day. We just observe the 1 day. But in the ancient world, there would have been a week of celebration around this period. So Beltane is the name that the Celtic people gave this part of the orbit when it was halfway between the spring equinox or the vernal equinox and summer solstice. So this is actually a particular point that we reach, and we've just reached it. In fact, probably as we're having this conversation, we're reaching it right now. The astronomical midpoint is coming in a day or so. So from the Beltane, which is May Day, this is a time in the Northern Hemisphere when all the spring is happening. All the buds are budding, the flowers are coming out of the ground, fertility is everywhere. It's the start of summer. It's a transitional point. Literally, the seasons that we live within are demarcated by these points on the Earth's orbit that we're going to go through, okay? So after Beltane, we're back to the summer solstice. We just talked about that. High summer solstice. The sun is standing still. Long nights in the Northern Hemisphere. Short nights in the Northern Hemisphere and long days, okay? It's the longest day. That's why when you're out in the summer, it just feels so good to be out and about at 9 o'clock, 9:30, and the sun's still up. This was very important, the day of most light. And then if we go from there, we get to the harvest festival, which the ancient calendar called Lunar, which Lu means light. And this would be a time of harvest. Again, then we keep moving on again. This is the autumn equinox, equal day, equal night. And then we're around to where we have what you see on the graphic there says Samhain. We call that today Halloween. Okay, that's the cultural holiday. The astronomical midpoint's at about the 7th of November, and Samhain is celebrated on the 31st of October, Halloween. But as I said before, in the ancient world, there would have been 7 days of party. So it kind of is still fitting into that, albeit kind of hidden in a way. Then we're down to the winter solstice. Now, the winter solstice is synonymous with Christmas. And the winter solstice is when the shortest day of the year and the longest night happens. And if you observe the sun on this day, you will notice that it's just coming up and going down after a few hours, coming up and going down. However, the point on the horizon is not changing and doesn't change to around the 25th, 26th, 27th of December, when in the ancient world they said the sun was born, because it's physically moved 1 degree north around the time of Christmas, coincidentally. And then we go on 8 further. We've got Imbolc, which is the end of winter. The end of winter and the beginning of spring. It's when the snowdrops are coming up in the UK. This is a massive transition point and was observed because we're now out of the long nights and we're getting the sun back again. And then we go back to the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, the true equinox, where time has been measured since the dawn of measuring time. The spring equinox, equal day, equal night.
So with the whole sun and the moon and everything else moving through the sky, you got this graphic here. Can you describe to the viewers what's going on here?
Yeah, Hugh, thank you. So this is critical now to just get this point. As this graphic explains it really well. We got our stone circle there. And if we just start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. So the moonrise you were talking about, which we're going to have a look at later in Kalanish, the lowest moonrise, right? Okay. That's a comparative chart as to how low it actually does go across the sky. And that happens once every 18.6 years. A full moon will do that. Okay. So this is a very rare lunar phenomenon. It connects with tides, high tides. It connects with currents in the air, weather, all sorts of things. It's an extreme rise and set position of the moon. And the ancients were obsessed with it. I'm probably as obsessed with it as what they were, to be honest. And following the path of the moon is one of the most enjoyable things I think anyone could ever do. To me, it's actually more fascinating than the sun, to really, really understand the lunar cycles and to follow them to the point where pretty much I could, know where I am in the lunar cycle and where it's going to rise. So that kind of thing is like a build up of just observations, of just being where it doesn't matter where you are, Hugh. You could be anywhere. You could be in a city, you could be in the countryside, but just being aware where the moon is going to come up and where it's going to set. So anyway, back to the graph. That's what we call the southern major standstill of the moon. And then you can see that moon, 18.6 years that happens, is actually lower than the winter solstice sun. So when you're out next in the winter solstice, looking at the sun and seeing how low it is in the sky at midday, the moon is lower than that. Okay? And that's really low across the sky. So then you've got your winter solstice. Then above that, you can see the equinox, which we talked about earlier. And if you notice on the equinox, if you follow the line, it comes straight up there due east and then sets there due west. So this was great for navigation. This is great for building a stone circle. This is great for finding yourself if you're lost. So if you can know where you are in the solar cycle, and you know, right, okay, it's March the 21st, I need to go in, north direction. You can just wait for the sunrise coming up due east, and then you make a perfect right angle and go north, exactly north. So the equinox, really important date. Summer solstice, if you trace that line, you can see it comes right round now, right round the back to the northeast and northwest. And that's the one where you're going to have your Stonehenge alignments, where it's coming up there, where that red line comes up. You're going to have your sunrise at Stonehenge and the famous monuments that have the sunrise of the summer solstice. And then even more far north than that, you've got the major northern standstill of the moon. So you can see with this graph how different the actual orbital paths across the sky of these celestial bodies actually is. There's a major difference in their rise and set positions. But what fascinates me about the moon the most is what it takes. Now, just get this into your head. What it takes the sun to do in a year, the moon will do in 1 month. Okay, so that's why it fascinates me, because it's moving so fast across the sky. The moon, it can actually exceed the rise and set position of the sun in a month, which is what we've been having over the lunar standstill season that we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I think that's a good slide. I'll just move on to the next one, Hugh. This is the other one I'm really interested in, and I would suggest people research in fine detail, is the perigee and apogee of the moon. Basically, the perigee is when it's closest, apogee is when it's furthest away. This happens, again, once every month. One of these positions is happening. And this is when you're going to get high tides and big seas, and then you're going to have low, calm tides and so on. But you can see from this graph how different the moon actually is. This is, you could observe this with naked eye observations, the difference in size between the perigee and the apogee. And not all perigees are the same. Some are very, very, very close, like this one, 356K, about 356,000 K. And this is a close perigee full moon. And some of them, there's one closer perigee every year. And that's what we call the supermoons.
What about you talk about the moon, like the moon, people talk about the effects of the moon, the full moon and so forth, the whole werewolf thing. I mean, would the perigee of the moon then have a stronger effect on you and on the tides and things like this? Or does it make any difference if it's slightly closer or further away?
It makes an absolutely massive difference. In fact, if you have, good question, Hugh, good question. Okay, we'll just dig into it. If you have, so the perigees, like I said, you have one perigee that's the closest perigee of the year, right? And then maybe 3 months later, you'll have the next closest perigee. And then maybe 4 months after that, the next. They don't necessarily run in pattern because of the elliptical orbit, right? But you can find out the actual distances. But if you have the closest perigee on a full moon, when the gravitational forces are higher, and that's coinciding with the equinox sun, then you have the king tides. And that's the time when you can get flooding and things will burst their banks and so on like that. So that is literally how it stacks. That is why these were so critically important to the ancient people and to us today. I mean, this isn't knowledge that's hidden today. It's just not really it's not taught in schools. Let's put it like that. Yeah, you have to dig into it. But once you do, it starts making sense. It's like a spinning top. The moon comes closer, then it's further away. Then it's closer, then it's further away. As well as going up and down, up and down, up and down. As well as going full, new, full, new. So there's 3 phases, distinct phases that are going on with the moon. And I would say that when you have the conjunction of all 3 of those forces, like I said, with the sun as well, that's when you're going to get a higher energetic imprint, if you like, and physical one as well.
Right. So before we move on to looking at some sites, some sites that are related to the moon and other such things, one of the things we've talked to me about over the years is predicting weather by the moon. Now you hinted at it there. You can have extreme tides and chaos and things like that, but over the years, we've stayed in touch, and you've given me guidance on like when it's going to be good weather, when it's going to be bad weather. Don't do an event that day. And so, can we just talk a little bit about that? But then we'll get into looking at some of these sites.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, now, yeah. Predicting weather by the moon, okay, is an ancient art. Practiced in the South Pacific. It's tied into the fishing as well. The fishing, when the fish are biting and when they're not, and when you put energy into hunting and when you don't. But let's just say, because this is a huge subject. I mean, this is another book that I'm putting together, Hugh, the Predicting Weather by the Moon. But let's just say with say 80% accuracy, which isn't bad, and I'll give one for your viewers now, right? And this, you can all check this one for yourself, right? On the full moon, okay, as the moon rises into the sky, most of the time it will clear the sky. And you will have a clear sky. Now, you can be raining all day, but the moon will rise, and then you'll see it breaking. And then as it gets higher into the sky, you'll see it clear the sky. Now, I'm not just saying that, Hugh. Old nautical, what they call old nautical saying, the full moon eats the clouds. Okay. So this is hundreds, if not thousands of years old, okay? People have noticed this. So what I've just said to you there is, as the moon rises, a full moon, right, it clears the sky. So the rule of thumb, Hugh, and I'm not saying this is 100%, okay? I'm not putting it like that. But the rule of thumb is, when the moon is in the sky, it's normally dry. So what you need to do then is you work out what time is the moon rising, where's it rising, is it in perigee, is it in apogee, is it at a declination point, what phase is it in? And when you've got all those parts and you've been observing the moon and observing the weather, you've not been just affected by the weather, you've been observing it in relation to lunar phases and movements. It is undeniable that there is a pattern. I'm not saying it's 100%, but I am saying, it's a good 80. I can pick days which is a good day to go camping and days that I definitely wouldn't years in advance.
The thing that gets me about, so you're talking about, the perigee, which is closer, apogee, which is further away. So that comes into it obviously as well.
Yes.
The closer it gets. So you got all these different elements, these different kind of very slight movements and timings and phases and other things like that. But there is like a science behind it. You were telling me about there was someone from, like, was it New Zealand or the South Pacific who'd also studied this, kind of got you kind of interested in it as well. And so it seems like this is an ancient science, an ancient knowledge system, which was probably part of, going back into thousands of years ago, and it could be related to agriculture as well if you develop this kind of understanding, and navigation as well, because you don't want to go out when it's extremely bad weather into the seas.
Absolutely, Hugh. I mean, one of the and you're quite right. I got these breadcrumbs over 20 years, 25 years ago when I was down in the South Seas. And I, just a little aside, a little pivot here. Well, to cut a long story short, I met the old wise man of the island on an island off the coast of Tahiti, right in the South Pacific. And he said to me, in their culture, they would wait 7 years, 8 years before they would do a navigational expedition. And I was like, why is that? He said, because the moon and the tides and the currents all had to be in the same place. And when they were, the guys with these, I'm talking about these South Pacific Islanders, big muscly guys with paddles on a boat, they would go out together, Hugh, right? And they would catch a wave in Tahiti and surf it to Rarotonga, which is like going from London to, Delhi on one or two waves. They would surf. That's how they got around. They would wait for the right moon, the right currents, the right tides, and they would catch a wave, and that would take them to their destination. They weren't paddling. Imagine that.
Incredible. But that's incredible. I mean, that could explain how people, could reach Easter Island. It could explain how people, got around the South Pacific. This is Thor Heyerdahl. He was doing this, a long time ago, back in the 50s and 60s. And I remember this story of Alexander Thom, who was also out sailing on his boat, and I remember him saying, I think he mentioned this in the TV program he did for the BBC, Cracking the Stone Age Code, and in one of his books, about reaching the Outer Hebrides and witnessing the moon. And I think it was during the time of the extreme point of the moon, the thing that we witnessed back in 2006, which I believe you're going to be talking about next, because that was an experience going up there. And seeing that from myself, back in 2006, really kind of blew my mind.
There is the view from Kalanish. We've got some photos of that coming up, but that just shows the rise of the moon there. That's what we saw, mate. There it is, the southern standstill of the moon. I mean, that one's been time-lapsed, but you can see how low it is in the sky. And it's actually coming out of what they say is the old lady of the Moors is coming out of. So if you look at that, where the moonrise is happening, the belly is where the moonrise is coming, and then it's rising, and right above the kind of like pyramid-like structure, which is a natural formation or a hill that looks like a pyramid, whatever way you want to talk about it. But that's where the moon is, right above the head of this lady of the Moors lying down. I don't know if your viewers can see that, but that is the southern major standstill of the moon. And look, this subject, Hugh, this is why I say to people to look at it, is absolutely fascinating. There's nothing better than going with a load of mates to the north of Scotland, to a stone circle, and then waiting for a moonrise that happens once every 18.6 years. I mean, it don't really get better than that. And then you're getting photos like this. So it's just it's a fascinating thing. So if you remember the graphic image, it showed you the lowest point of the moon. There it is. That's how it looks. I think I've got one more here for you. Yeah, there's the moon through the stones of Kalanish. That's how low it is. So now the moon's risen.
That is impressive, isn't it? Look at that.
And we're looking at the full moon at the southern major standstill through the stones of Kalanish. And we were both there, mate, when we were observing this. And it was amazing. I mean, what a place. It was absolutely amazing. You know, you've only got so many lunar standstills.
So this image of Kalanish is pretty epic, isn't it? It was such a treat to be able to go up there. It was incredible weather. We ended up hanging out on the beach, doing all these different things when we were up there. And, you know, I've been up there once or twice since, and it's one of the most impressive places, you know, when it comes to megalithic sites anywhere in the world, in my opinion. These are like giant blades of stone placed in circles, egg shapes, different geometries. This one's got like a huge crucifix of avenues going off in 4 directions from it as well. Plus, then you've got all the astronomy associated with it, you know, especially this lunar astronomy. And so, yeah, it's quite an impressive place. And so we covered that a little bit. I mean, what else have we got going on here? And let's look at some more sites that you've been studying.
Okay, mate. We'll just move on to this one. Chimney Rock, Colorado. Now, this is, again, I put this one in there because this is showing us that not only in the Outer Hebrides were they following the standstills of the moon, but also across the pond at Chimney Rock. They noticed this natural doorway in the rock escarpment that if they were then literally built a pueblo that was the viewing point for this, right? And the same thing happens with the moon. It's coming through the portal on the lunar standstill. So this was important enough on one side of the ocean of the Atlantic to the other side of the Atlantic. They were supposed to believe that they independently, you know, just kind of both got into this kind of lunar watching to the point where they were, you know, making literally like a natural rocky outcliffe a site for their lunar observations. I think this one's even more kind of mysterious because this is a natural rocky cliff. But like I said, the viewing point is from an actual pueblo that has been purposely put there for this observation. I'm now going to just jump us to the other part of another place on the Earth because I just want to kind of get this idea across that these celestial observations were noted, and as you can see here at Angkor Wat, the architecture is deliberately built to such precision to witness the equinox. So on the autumn equinox and the September equinox, this effect happens at Angkor Wat. And all these people are going to see it now. So, you know, this is something which is of great interest. We've got this solar kind of observation, but it's almost like this reverence through the architecture so that we can actually place the sun at the top of our triptych, you know, arches. Just absolutely incredible. And I'll just bring us back to merry old England. This is West Kennet Longbarrow. This has been a favourite place of mine to visit for a long time. and many people have researched West Kennet Long Barrow. But what's striking about it, apart from the giant stones and the cave or the chamber within it, is that on the equinox, the sun starts coming in and illuminating stones inside of the chamber. So obviously the most famous one of these effects is Newgrange in Ireland. But this just goes to show that these sunlight entering chamber motifs happen in other places as well. Almost like the solar light, the masculine, re-entering into the dark feminine. Could be something like that. That's another shot there. The way that stone in West Kennet Long Barrow is just being fully illuminated now. And now we go to an even smaller monument. I know you've been here, Hugh, and I've been to this one. And this is like just such a lovely site to visit. Wellow in Somerset and Stony Littleton Long Barrow. This is so in such good condition, this site. It's a true joy to go through it. It's just surrounded by countryside. It's quite elevated. And on the winter solstice, if you get on your hands and knees and you crawl into that little shaft of that little entrance there, you sit at the back of the chamber there, which we've all done. The winter solstice gives you this, not that, this. The sunlight coming in. So, again, marking the shortest day of the year. When the sun comes in here, we know we're in midwinter. This is
this is I managed to get up there 3 years ago, I think, on the winter solstice, and I made a little video about it. Maybe I'll put a link in here or a couple of images in, because it really surprised me, because it's sometime after sunrise it happens, and so it's not oriented east, it's oriented a few degrees off east, because it's coming in later. And I think that's the same with Angkor Wat as well. So that's another thing that, you know, you have to consider with these sites. They're not sometimes aligned exactly east or west or whatever. They're a bit off. And this it has to come up over the hills in the distance, but it still illuminates it on the winter solstice morning. So I found that really interesting. And also when I was there, I got lucky with the weather, and 0 other people were there. No one turned up until like 2 hours later, after the sunrise. And it kind of blows my mind how you get all these people turn up at Stonehenge, you get all these people want to go to Newgrange, but there's so many sites that have these beautiful alignments and illuminations, you know, like at Karahan Tepe. I mean, very few people, apart from me and JJ, will go there and observe it, you know, on the winter solstice. And so I think, you know, we need to encourage people to kind of witness this phenomena. It's almost like, you know, you imagine your ancient ancestors went to all this trouble to build this particular site, align it so it gets illuminated in a very beautiful, very specific, very accurate manner. And we don't even bother going up there to appreciate it. So I think that's, I think that needs to be addressed. I mean, me and you are different. We're a different breed. We do that. We'll go to any site if we possibly can for the sunrise or sunset. But I think it's really important. It really surprised me, because it was the most beautiful morning I was there. I got really lucky. It was on the 21st as well. You can go a few days either side as well, which a lot of people may not realize. There's, like, as you mentioned, the standstill. There's actually, the sunrise in the same point, more or less, for like 5 days or more in some cases, depends where you are. And so I think that needs to be addressed. And obviously this is just one of thousands of sites that have these kind of alignments.
Yes, I completely agree, mate. And you've actually gone into a realm where it's almost hard to articulate, but you're absolutely right. This doesn't happen at sunrise, the moment when the sun pops over the horizon. And that's kind of what we always used to thinking. Oh, it's got to be like when the sun or the moon is just coming up over the horizon. Not necessarily. The sun can be in the sky, like in this example, for a few degrees or more, and then come into the chamber. Or the shadow can be moving 2 hours after the sunrise, or 2 hours before the sunset. So we got to kind of come away from the linear, it must be a sunrise or a sunset, and let's look at the whole day. Let's look at midday. Let's look at the sunrise and the sunset. But let's also look, throughout the day, what actually is happening with this site and the shadow and the light. And it's surprising what we might find. You see? I just wanted to take us out of the ancient world was for a quick second, right? And just kind of bring it into the near history. This is called Box Tunnel, built by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Okay. And, it's a nice tunnel. But interestingly, on his birthday, this happens. The sun, you can see there, shines down the tunnel, which I just think is amazing. Now, it leads me to think, being on being Kingdom Brunel's birthday, and he's the guy who built it, it's almost like an alignment to him, which I find absolutely fascinating, that this kind of aligning of sites or places, or in this case, engineering, is still going on in the recent history that we've got. This is a few hundred years ago.
Oh, but you mentioned his birthday, all right? I just want to point out to people, his birthday was April the 9th. And that is my birthday as well. So that is aligned to my birthday, that particular tunnel. So I should probably go there on my birthday one year and actually do it.
We get the decks out. We'll just have the music going, some lasers down there, the sun coming in. Yeah, it'd be good. I like it. Yeah, April the 9th, what a day. And just as another quick one here, look at that Manhattan Henge. That's, whether they knew about this when they built Manhattan, I don't know, but people go to watch this as well. So this is what I was saying to you earlier. It's about observing the sun and the moon. Doesn't matter where you are, It's great if you can be on the solstice at an ancient site and the sun's coming in. But if you haven't got the ability to get to somewhere like that, then just in your locality, work out where the sun's going to rise, where it's going to set. Now we look, we've both been here, Hugh. I've been lucky enough to witness the effect of this. So this is El Castillo, Chichen Itza. This is the famous pyramid in Yucatan, where on the spring and autumn equinox, and this is just exactly what I've just been talking about. So not at sunrise and not at sunset, but intriguingly at 4:30 to 4:40 in the afternoon, the angle of this pyramid means that the shadows cast, you can see it there on the staircase coming down. You can see the shadow, this wavy line, okay? That wavy line that connects to the bottom of the photo where the head is actually moves over the course of 20 to 30 minutes and gives the effect of chevrons or triangles kind of moving and elongating, which literally represents the slithering and sliding of a serpent. This is just unbelievable engineering. And this pyramid's got incredible amount of symbolism in it, the 4 sides, the 4 seasons. and so on. Is a talk on itself, just the stuff within the pyramid. But the point I wanted to pass over today is the shadow. We're looking at the shadow now. We're not looking at the moonrise or the sunrise or no. This is the shadow we're looking at, and it's the shadow that's been created, and that is giving us the optical illusion of a snake sliding down a pyramid. I mean, can you imagine it, Hugh? You know, oh, what are you up to later, mate? Like, this is the Yucatan world, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm going down a pyramid. Oh, yeah, what's on down there? Well, it's the old snake sliding down the stairway. Like, oh, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll come. I mean, is this how it went down? I mean, like, just incredible. So if you get a chance to go to Mexico, make sure you go there around the spring or autumn equinox, go to Chichen Itza and see the snake, because it's just mind-blowing. What did you think of it, Hugh?
Yeah, we were there during COVID times, those glorious days when we escaped and spent 5 months in Mexico. And we got there and we went there and we witnessed it all happening, and it was epic. I mean, it's just the thing is, it's like people show these speeded up videos so you get this whole quick movement, but actually it takes a while. It takes, like, to see the whole effect, it's like a couple of hours, I think, in total. And it is odd how it happens at a specific time of the day. It's not necessarily the morning. It's not necessarily the sunset or anything like that. But this is something that we're going to get onto with you in a bit, because this is a phenomena that we find at other very important sites, including the site you've been researching mostly, the Long Man of Wilmington. But yeah, I think it's pretty incredible that they can design this to start with. But I imagine they had a model they worked with, they experimented with it, so it wasn't just like building it and it kind of worked. I'm sure they experimented to get it right. But yeah, it just shows you that they were having fun with it as well, and they were ingenious when it come to working with the shadows and the sun and the moon and in the Mayans' case, the stars as well.
Well, mate, I'm going to give your audience an exclusive here, right? Because this is the equinox, the autumn equinox, I believe, right? And this is the solar shadow, okay? So when I was in Mexico, probably 20 years ago, and I was chatting with one of the guards that were looking after this site, and we got talking, and he could see that I was into it, and I was asking these questions and about the shadow, and he could see that I was kind of curious as to the design of this. And he said to me, "Hey, amigo." I was like, "What?" He said, all the tourists come and they all watch this, the solar and the shadow. But guess what? I said, "What?" He said, "We all come," meaning the guards and their families, "on the full moon at equinox. And the shadow effect happens, Hugh, at the same rate, but with lunar shadow at night." It absolutely blew me away, because you can't get in there at night. It's kind of locked off. I think it's like 4 a.m, around that time. But the lunar shadow does the same effect at the time of the equinox. I mean, that really opened it up for me.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that's one of the things that I've been trying to get my head into. I've actually been questioning Fabio Silva about this on this course I'm on, because the way that the moon can, not exactly, but it can pretty much copy the sun. For example, if we look at the solstices, if we look at the winter solstice, if we're talking about Karahan Tepe, for instance, I always questioned, because the sun rises on the winter solstice and it illuminates the Stonehenge, is there a time when the moon would do a similar thing, especially the full moon, and actually create that similar effect. And according to our calculations, and we work with Rodney Hale and Andrew Collins, it could happen at Karahan Tepe on certain years. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is most certainly the case also at, sites such as this. But yeah, I think more analysis, more detail, using stellarium, which is good. But once you use stellarium, which is the ultimate archaeoastronomy program, the moon gets really complicated because it moves so fast and it's so erratic through the night sky that it's hard to kind of gauge where it was many thousands of years ago. But yeah, that's one of the issues with archaeoastronomy is the complication of the moon and how hard it is to kind of record that back in time on these programs. But the moon, because it does follow a similar path at the opposite side of the year, this is what is so fascinating, because it would be roughly around the summer solstice this would happen at Karahan Tepe. So it would be the opposite side of the year if it does happen.
Well, yeah, Hugh. I mean, I think you're really over the target now, because those special times of the year when it could exactly happen are when we're not at the major standstill or the minor standstill, but halfway through what we call the equalize point or the balance point, okay? Or the halfway point, which is when the moon is rising at exactly the same place. So if you were at Stonehenge, for example, and you saw the sunrise of the summer solstice sun come up over the hillstone, you would also be able to experience on an equalized year the same effect with the moon coming up exactly over the hillstone. You see?
Would that depend though? Would that depend though if it's a full moon, or if it depends what part of the moon cycle it's in as well? The more kind of the phase of the moon. Because if it was, for example, I guess it doesn't, because you'd want it to be a full moon. If at Karahan Tepe, for instance, because you want it to be bright enough to make the illumination take place, not just where it rises, what it looks like on the horizon or whatever in the sky, but actually for an illumination to take place. It's like Newgrange, does it happen at Newgrange during the summer solstice period at that point? So again, you'd have to wait until it was a full moon as well, which could be it could take it even longer to get, it could take years and years and years until you get to that point where you can actually get that precise effect.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's possible. The beauty of it is the ancients had all the time in the world. They weren't rushing to get to a site. They weren't, having to deal with the timescales and diaries we're on today. So they had all the time in the world to watch the moon, the sun, the shadows. I mean, what more would you? It's almost like they were just playing with what they were given. If you see what I mean.
It was like their screen, wasn't it? You imagine it. There's something that I talk about a lot with people is they didn't have distractions. They didn't have, what we have, where we're, if we haven't got a phone or a laptop nearby or a TV or whatever, we get freaked out, we get panicky and things like that. But then they had the landscape, they had the night sky, and they had each other, and the sea if they're near, water and things like that. So they didn't have the distraction. And I think you would, the movement of the sun, the shadow, the moon, the stars, the kind of creating mythologies from the different, what you can see in the sky. And I think that's incredible as well, that you think about, if you go way, way back, I mean, even before the whole Göbekli Tepe, before Stonehenge, go way, way back, you can see these mythologies forming. It's something that J.J. Ainsworth has been doing a lot of work on. She talks about that at the Megalithomanía conference and other places as well. It's going to be a big part of our new book, because the mythologies that come out of that become ingrained in our consciousness to such a point we don't even really know where they came from. They're so old, some of them, and they're often to do with the movements in the sky. I mean, you look at the work of Hamlet's Mill, and then later Graham Hancock, Robert Bouval applying it to Egypt. You have obviously Andrew Collins applying it to Göbekli Tepe and other places. I think, all these cultures developed their mythologies from the study and movements of the sky. And this is why it gets so interesting, you know, when you start kind of trying to decode what they all mean. And even like astrology itself appears to be much, much older. I mean, Martin Sweatman's found evidence of that going back to the Paleolithic, to the Paleolithic caves of France and Germany and other such places. And also Göbekli Tepe and things like this. And so I find it fascinating that even all that was happening right up until pretty much the time of the Maya. And really, not after the Maya, there wasn't much of that. Archaeoastronomy kind of lost its way. And when the whole Christianity kind of thing moved in, even though they often built sites, you know, churches and things like that over ancient sites, and they do align them north, south, east, and west, usually to the east. So they did have some understanding of that. But it's been, in the modern era, it's not a thing. I mean, the only thing people really recognize with all this now is things like this. The tourists go to Chichen Itza, or they go to Stonehenge on the solstice, when actually almost every site potentially has some shadow effect at some time of year or something going on. And so I think, you know, again, it's like, you know, it's almost like we're in a situation, you know, I think megalithomania is part of that, your research and your projects like the Antiquarian Society. We're just trying to keep it alive almost, trying to keep this kind of, these principles, these ideas in people's consciousness, because they're so important and they shaped the reality even potentially that we live in now. And so, yeah, there's a lot more going on, you know, the background of this than people realize. So I like what you do. You go out, you look at the night sky, you check where the moon is every day, and you kind of notice its different positioning, and it's pretty mind blowing. It kind of blows your mind. You know, you can catch the moon when it's rising sometimes, and it's giant in the landscape, partly because of the atmosphere and everything else. And so I think it's you know, good to get people back into this kind of thinking.
Well, I would just lay a gauntlet down for all of the viewing audience right now, because this is something which I would implore you to do. Wherever you are, wherever you live, it matters not. Observe a waning crescent rise, a moon waning crescent rise. And when you see that, it is like one of the most amazing spectacles you'll ever see. I mean, as you know, from my place, I've got a good view of the eastern horizon. But what we're talking about is the crescent moon at night coming up like two horns over the horizon. I mean, just that alone, you wouldn't even have to put a pyramid or a stone circle or, you know, anything. Just watching that alone is incredible. And it's lost, you know, people, like you were saying, they go to Chichen Itza, they go to Stonehenge, full moon, some people new moon, but all the phases, the gibbous, the crescents, the first quarters, the last quarters, they've all got their own fascinating personality. And when you observe them rolling through their phases and their rise positions, you cannot help but be connected to it. You know, the more you do it, it's like a muscle. The more you observe the moon, the more you won't even have to look for it. You'll feel it. I can feel it when the moon's up now. You know, so we're talking on a different level of understanding. You know, it's incredible. So yeah, waning crescent moonrise. That is something else, and you get that once a month if you're lucky and you have the weather, which it should be doing, because as it rises, it will clear the sky. Giving you a little tip there. All right, let's move on to another one in Mexico, because the Mexicans loved it. Or the Yucatan people, or the builders of Zibalchaltun, which is what we're looking at now, the Temple of the Seven Dolls, provides us with this incredible, like a gun with a target. And as we said earlier, this happens on the equinox, but not at the moment of sunrise. Because as you can see, this is still quite high up, the actual the temple there. This happens, from memory, this was, more than 25 years ago, but it happens maybe 15 to 20 minutes after the sunrise. So the sun has to be high enough in the sky. But when it gets high enough in the sky, maybe like 2 to 3 degrees, if you're standing along the avenue opposite Zibbelchaltun, as these people are, you can capture the sun coming straight through it. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. Aligned for the equinoxial sun. So like you say, these guys were doing it. And I think when the Spanish conquistadors got into the Mexico and South America, probably all this kind of knowledge and building and understanding, that was probably lost, shall we say.
You also got, like with Zibbelchaltun, you've got the avenue. There's like a very long avenue going down from the main kind of pyramid temple complex down to the Temple of the Seven Dolls, which is east-west. It's like the kind of, or more or less east-west, because it could be a fraction off actually. And so you actually have this it's almost like a ceremonial routeway between one part of the site and this equinox aligned temple at the other end of it.
That's right. And the beauty of these places as well, you've got to get there for 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that's a mission in itself. Getting to a remote pyramid or temple in the middle of the Mexican jungle at 5 o'clock in the morning is, that's a mission in itself. And we were lucky enough on this one to have the good weather, you see. Because don't think that for 1 minute that the weather's always going to be on your side. I've had many an equinox, many a solstice where there's been just low cloud and rain. Okay. So you're never going to get it 100% of the time. Next slide. We're just going to change tack a little bit here, Hugh. And I want to share this site with you called Utufara, which can be found on the island of Raiatea in the South Pacific, which is in the Tahiti island group. Now, this is called a marae, or the stone is part of a marae, and a marae translates as a big stone temple made out of usually coral, slabs of coral, giant coral. You've obviously got the one in Tonga Tapu, which we've both been to. That's kind of made out of coral. But it shows you this is the middle of the South Pacific, and then again, giant stones, right? Giant stones. It's got to be giant stones. This knowledge of giant stones is literally now gone. We've gone all the way over to the other side of the world. Now, when I found this temple, this was a real classic. There's actually a YouTube clip you might want to link to your viewers of this, but it's probably buried on YouTube. It was a very, very long time ago, probably 20 odd years ago. The rediscovery of Utufara, I think I called it. And it was a short video of when we went and found, after being told about this site, we actually found it on an island in the jungle. We had to cut our way there with machetes. And when we got there, it was completely overgrown, completely abandoned. There were no people using it, or it had been there for a very long time. So we had machetes. We cleared with the locals' permission, who came with us. the area around it, and I found this stone. And I was talking to the locals about it. And one of the things they said that these particular holes, they put like a torch. When I say a torch, I mean like a stick with a kind of like a flaming torch that you would, like a candle, yeah, in these holes. And I was like, all right, okay, interesting. And then didn't think about it anymore. And then I got home after my trip to the South Pacific. I started just putting dots on this stone, and then realized that actually what we were looking at is the Southern Cross and Australia Triangulus. I mean, in the top right-hand corner, you can see those 4 stars there, or 4 holes, which I believe represent stars. And that is the same shape as the Southern Cross. And what's interesting is if you're looking at the Southern Cross, and then you look to your left, you see a triangle. And if you look on the left of the screen here, you see that triangle, almost like an equilateral triangle. That's Australia Triangulus. I could not believe it. We actually had a star map on the stone. And I believe when he was talking to me about the candles, that was like a distant memory of possibly the illumination to represent stars. So this is a whole other side to archaeoastronomy that we're looking into now. I'm just going to give you this little bit here because this kind of goes into a whole talk on itself. But just for your kind of like listeners, yeah, when you're looking at stones, check the patterns, because maybe you're looking at a star constellation, and that's just pretty cool. I think we're just coming to this last one now. We go back to America, but this is North America. I've not been here. I'd like to go. I think apparently these stones have moved now, but due to some kind of volcanic earthquake activity, not sure. But anyway, this is called Fajada Butte. And this pile of old stones, this, you wouldn't look at them twice. This, you know, just look what you're looking at. It's just like a pile of rubble. Okay. And yet, this pile of old stones is a sophisticated observatory. Okay. So if you just look on the right of that slide, you see those stones again piled up on top of each other. And it says solar markings at midday. So now at midday, the sun is coming down on top of those pile of stones, right? Within and underneath those stones. So you can actually get in there and get underneath it. And inside, so let's just say we could get inside, on the wall there in the stone is carved 2 spirals. And you can see those spirals when you look at the left-hand screen top section. You can see those spirals. So they're carved within and under those 3 slabs. And incredibly, on the equinox, at midday, 2 daggers of sunlight appear. One goes through that little spiral on the left-hand side. So I'm looking at the top left box now. And then one just to the right of the center of the spiral. I mean, this is just incredible. These are sun daggers, they're called, by the archaeologists who found them. And they, at midday, mark the equinox. Now, we talked about the solar and lunar cycles, because if we're just saying that within that big long cycle we were talking about of the moon, the one time when it matches up equally with the sun, the same thing will happen with the lunar light. Okay. And then if we look at the summer solstice, next box, I mean, this must have been incredible for the people that sort of noticed this. You know, whether them stones were there, I would have to assume that they were there and someone noticed this rather than someone stacked them like that. You know, what came first? The some daggers or the cave? I can't work out what way it was done. But nevertheless, on the summer solstice, a solar dagger penetrates the middle of that spiral at midday. And then if we look to the third slide at the top section, on the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light go either side of the spiral. I mean, I'm just blown away by that. And what's important for me in my research, and now we've talked about sunrise, sunset, we've talked about a few degrees above the horizon, we've talked about shadows in the afternoon. So there's no specific time when this stuff was going on almost, but key points were midday, or when the sun is at high noon, as seen on this top section. And then if we look below, we can see it says solar lunar markings at rising. And if you can see the graphic on the far bottom right, it's showing you the direction of where the light is coming in from a completely different angle. And it's showing you the equinox fully illuminated, or on the mid-cycle of the lunar cycle, fully illuminated. On the minor standstill of the moon, right? The minor standstill of the moon, half of that spiral is illuminated. And then on the major standstill of the moon, just the major spiral isn't illuminated, just the little one up in the corner there. I mean, you know, this is a level of sophistication and observation where the builders of this have spent a lot of time there. I mean, they've spent at least 18.6 years there, right? At sunrise, at midday, on the full moon, on the solstice, on the equinox, on the winter solstice. You know, they've lived there. And from that, design this beautiful spiral-like graphic that they've interplayed. I mean, this is solar lunar interplay on a spiral carving, so that I, the observer, can determine where we are on the 18.6 year lunar cycle, or when we're at the winter solstice or summer solstice. Absolutely incredible. Incredible.
That is incredible, isn't it? That is one thing that would be very cool to witness, because it's so subtle. It's only a small part of one site as such, and it's got this blade of light thing. It's always fascinated me, you know, because we get it at like Newgrange. You have like this blade of light moving across the back chamber at Newgrange on the winter solstice. You get it kind of like almost like a rectangle of light moving across at Lunar on the Equinox in Ireland as well, in the Boyne Valley. You get the blade of light moving across the head on Karahan Tepe. And so there's so many subtle elements to the nature of archaeoastronomy, which really gets me. And I think this is one fine example of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just bringing everything together, but it also shows, like, you know, the simplicity. We're not talking about a pyramid. We're not talking about Stonehenge and the whole big thing going on. We're not talking about, you know, these incredible structures. This is almost like, you know, Flintstone level, but so sophisticated that you've got to be there on the right time and the right place with the right weather to see these things. Absolutely incredible. But as I said, what's important is they were looking at not just the rise and set positions with this monument, they were looking at the midday, which is, I think, a real nod towards their sophistication and knowledge of the seasons and the cycles of the sun and moon.
So we had a good look around the world at some of the archaeoastronomically aligned sites, but I think we need to move on to this now. This is the reason we really wanted you to come on, Stuart, because it appears you have made a major discovery in the Sussex landscape, which has been out for everyone to view for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but no one spent the time to observe these different times of year at the Long Man of Wilmington in Sussex. So tell us what you found. I mean, this is the theme of the book. This is the theme of the talk at Megalithodmania. Just let's outline some of the key points of what you found.
Okay, Hugh, thank you. So this, for me, is this is a result of, shall we say, being in and around the landscape of the Long Man or Wilmington and literally sleeping there. So we sleep there overnight. Okay, when we go, we'll crash out, we'll wake up in the morning, and I'm fortunate enough that I don't live too far from the Long Man, so I can get out there at these auspicious times of the year. And if I'm passing the Long Man, I'll stop and observe. So this comes from years of research, and it was in 2023 when you came, after I shared with you what I thought I'd discovered. And from then, it's gained traction as the summer solstice alignment of the Long Man of Wilmington. So, as you said, the book is The Long Man of Wilmington Decoded. And I've decoded it in an astroarchaeonomical way. And I think this could be as big as the Stonehenge alignment for the east of Britain. But where it's a little bit different is the awareness of seeing how throughout the year the sun interacts with this landscape. So I think a good way to show this is to just use the clip you very kindly did when you brought your drone to the Long Man back in 2023 when we went through it. So without further ado, Megalithomania, everyone. This direction, and sunset, which we just had, that goes down in this direction. At the time of the summer solstice, the orientation of the Long Man at rise and set is fully illuminated by the sun. And at the sunrise, in this little gully over here, there's just the smallest of shadows cast in that little gully there from this mound here. And then throughout the day, it's illuminated for the entire day. Full sun gets this. It's facing just off of due north. And then the sunset, when it goes down, just now we've had that over there,
we get this same effect where this gully here, just in the side here, casts a shadow as well on this side, almost like a balance. So the time of the summer solstice, the Long Man is illuminated all from the morning all the way through to the evening.
Okay, so I think we need to just point out straight off the bat that the geoglyph that we've just seen, the Long Man, is the biggest human geoglyph in Europe and the second biggest geoglyph in the world. Okay, so sleepy old Sussex is really punching above its weight here. There's only one geoglyph bigger than the Long Man, and that's the giant of Atacama in Chile, which is a few feet bigger. But nevertheless, the Long Man and its site and its location on the South Downs lends itself to this incredible effect where during the summer solstice period, the sunrise, as it comes up over the North Downs, immediately touches the Long Man. And then for the entire day, the longest day, the day of most light, the Long Man is bathed in sunlight until the sun comes to its set position, where the last beam of light from the sun is also touching the Long Man. So there we are, full sun all day. It's just standing there, hidden in plain sight. And it's just an amazing thing. It's just an amazing thing to see. There are two tiny shadows that are formed, not on the Long Man, but either side of it at sunrise and sunset, respectively, that are formed by the kind of shape, the terraform of the land. And they almost mark that it is in fact the solstice sunrise. But incredibly, as the sun is rising, the Long Man is in full sun, but this tiny little shadow to its left appears and then disappears. And then the same thing happens at the sunset. A tiny little shadow appears to its right and then it disappears. So we were quite stoked through this because for years there's been rumours of, is it an almanac of some sort? Does this happen? Does that happen? But there's never been a definitive answer. And I feel the reason for that is because to find the definitive answer, you need to be there day and night through the auspicious times of the year. And you need to be tuned right in and looking for what exactly is going on. So this was our 2023 discovery that we shared with the channel. And it went wide enough, obviously, that we actually, in academia.edu, had this gentleman, Mahmood Shelton, do an article on it. And, just briefly paraphrase him. Specifically, Mason noted that the monumental geoglyph was balanced between the rising and setting of the solstice sun. Although this balance might be interpreted as an accident of the figure's location upon the slope that faces north, a further aspect of its positioning is somewhat more special. The giant effigy actually remains in direct sunlight during the midsummer, whereas the topography of the surrounding landscape does not allow for this phenomena during the rest of the year, which is exactly what I was saying. You have to be there because, for example, at the winter solstice, it's in full shadow. It's the complete opposite. So from being, Hugh, in full sun all day, we go to the winter solstice and it's in full darkness all day and night. So there's a balance going on there. But the long man's got two staffs. And some suggest that these staffs represent balance. There's many other things that they represent, but balance being one of them. So I borrowed this photo off of you, Hugh. Hope you don't mind. But summer solstice 2021, 21st of June 2023. There it is, Megalithomania, knocking the ball out of the park again. There's the photo on the left. You can see the sunrise, and in the gully, just this faint shadow. And then on the right, the sunset, where this shadow comes, but it doesn't touch the long man. Even at sunset, the last rays of the sun are hitting him. So again, we're not looking for the sunrise over the Hillstone type effect, or the interestingly, I was going to say the Equinox shadow at Chichen Itza, but we are actually looking at that, but we'll get to that. But we're looking at this phenomenon of it being in the sun all day, from sunrise to sunset. That is the summer solstice alignment of the Long Man of Wilmington. Just got some text here. We've been through that. There's a great drone shot there of the summer solstice, showing you the wonderful landscape that surrounds the Long Man. And just a note on this landscape, while we've got this image up, if you just look to your left, you can see a trackway going up to the top there. That's an ancient trackway. And it connects with, just above the Long Man, another path that you can just see that goes along the ridge there. And that pathway is called the Giant's Causeway. And that's a man-made path. And then you can see the Long Man in full sun. And then next to it, there's an egg-shaped excavation. And then below that egg-shaped excavation that's got some trees in it at the moment, there's a platform, which we believe is all part of the ancient symbolic landscape of the Long Man of Wilmington. And then again, if you look at the Long Man, but then look above it, you can just see a kind of stripe. That's actually a long barrow up the top there, and a round barrow. So this site is absolutely steeped in ancient sites that our ancestors have been going to for years and years and years.
What is the dating supposed to be of the Long Man and the surrounding sites? I mean, obviously you got the Long Barrow, so that's probably Neolithic, but there's a lot of debate about the actual dating of it. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm kind of the mind, Hugh, that if we find a piece of pottery and it's Roman, does that mean it was Roman? Or if we find a coin in the stave or one of the staffs, you know, from the 16th century, does that mean it was 16th century? I'm not one that personally, I'm not one that necessarily buys the archaeological timeline on it, because it's been changed so many times. I can't keep up with the changes. Okay? So the official date of its construction is lost to whoever built it. However, one thing that hasn't changed is the effects that this part of the hill has in regards to light and shadow. They've been happening for many, many, many thousands of years. And they probably happened before humans ever came to this part of the world. Okay? So the light and shadow has been going on a long time, regardless of whether there was actually the geoglyph there or not, if you see what I mean. You will as we go through these slides. This was interesting because when there's another name locally for the Long Man, which is the Green Man. It was known locally as the Green Man. And some say that it never used to be chalk, or the chalk had grown out and dirt had got in there and it was tufts of grass. And, so maybe around the 1700s, it wasn't chalk like we see it today, which is concrete blocks painted white, not chalk. But if you imagine it was a chalk cut, and then over the years it filled, and then that grew with grass, okay? So then it was called the Green Man, which is fertility. This is one of the most fertility laden symbols we have in England, the Green Man. And you kind of get a haze during the summer, especially when it's high summer and especially when it's hot. So when we were down there, we were looking at the Green Man, and it appeared, whether it was an optical illusion, which it must have been, or whether it was physical grass or the sun hitting the grass in a certain way, but it looked like the head of the Green Man turned into a face, which was just incredible. I've tried to show it with this image, but it's kind of impossible to capture it. But if you're staring at the Long Man long enough, you may well see the face of the Long Man made out of the grass and the bushes, not the bushes, but the kind of the grass fauna around it. It's just incredible. And there it is again, full sunlight on the summer solstice. Now, I mentioned earlier, Hugh, right, and this is now where you're asking me about dating of the Long Man, right? Okay, this is why I find it super interesting, because just above the Long Man, there's a long barrow. It's called Windover Long Barrow. I want to take you up there, actually, because the orientation of that barrow is 51 degrees, which, as we know, is where the summer solstice sun rises. So what I'm now suggesting to you is the barrow on top of the Long Man is actually an aid to calibrate. So you're going to see all this in my talk, Hugh, but there is more than one solstice alignment going on. If we say the Long Man's in suns, from full day, sunrise to sunset, yeah, okay, well, it could be anything. Okay, well, what about the long barrow on top of the hill that's arranged and aligned to the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset? So are we then to believe, right, that this barrow on top of the hill, Windover Hill, that's aligned to the summer solstice sunrise, pointing towards that point on the horizon where the summer solstice sun comes up, and on the opposite direction to the winter solstice, right? So the whoever built this, right, they could go up there, they could observe it all, yeah? They could, right, we're going to build this massive mound now, all looking towards the summer solstice, right? And the opposite direction, as we know, is the winter solstice, right? But we didn't notice that at that little bit over the hill there, the sunrise was hitting that as well, and the sunset, we didn't notice that. We only noticed this. You can't have it both ways. You see what I mean? You either go with it that it's these people knew what they were doing and they were marking the summer solstice with a long barrow, and they were marking the summer solstice with the Long Man of Wilmington, and they were using the two to calibrate exactly when it's the right day, right? And my talk will actually go into how accurate, I mean, to literally a solar disk, the Long Man is for measuring the sun at noon and at sunrise and sunset, just like we saw at GW. Okay, so yeah,
That is
long barrow.
that is fascinating. There's one question. I mean, so you got this long barrow, like literally right above where the Long Man is, and you can clearly see. I think anyone can notice that it's flattened where the Long Man is kind of carved into the earth, so the chalk's exposed, which is the classic hill figure style. That is like, I mean, that's the problem. You can't date it, but clearly that has been flattened. That's not. I mean, so there's terraforming. They're like creating this kind of effect there in the landscape, and it's just so logical that it is linked with the long barrow. I mean, why on earth would you have this connection? Because you look on Wikipedia and they claim that the Long Man's built a few hundred years ago. They say that now with the Cern Giant hill figure, who's showing all his glory to the world down in Dorset. But I think it's just too conservative. And like you say, you can find evidence on the surface or just below the surface, and it doesn't add up. It's not necessarily it's Roman or medieval.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, to be honest, it's like saying, well, I found a newspaper at the Long Man. Like, it must have been built 2 weeks ago. Like, it's just, debris and human litter and detriment and has been around for a long time, right? Like things being dropped on the ground. Unless you were there as one of the builders, you don't know when it was built. No matter what anyone says, no matter what radiocarbon dating says. Radiocarbon dating has been changed so many times that it just keeps pushing dates back and back. And you see, unless you were there, you will never know. Okay, that's the way I look at it. But what we do know is if you're on that long barrow at summer solstice, the sun's going to rise right opposite it. And what we do know is if you're at the Long Man standing on the what we call Serpent Head platform at summer solstice, you will see the sunrise hit the Long Man and you'll see the sunset hit the Long Man. These are facts. You can't argue with it. This is how it is. So the argument then becomes not when was it dated, but are we going to say that the people that built this failed to notice those, even though they were so in touch with the heavens, as has been proved, they just failed to notice that the sunrise and sunset did this. You can't have it both ways, you see. So anyway, there is Windover Hill Barrow. This was done from Tom's archaeological survey. Just thought I'd put that in there to give the viewers a bit of archaeological documentation. And you see it says on the right-hand side, traces of an ancient road. That ancient road is actually a cursus. I walked down it with the lay hunters last year. And it's fluted. So at the top it's narrower, and as you go down it, it gets wider, and it's cambered. And it's exactly like we have at Stonehenge with the cursus and a long barrow being situated next to the cursus. I don't know what that means.
But just for people unaware, let's just describe what a cursus is, because it could be a bit confusing. So basically, you've got a Stonehenge. That's the most famous one. So that's about 1.7 miles long. It's huge, and it's like two parallel, like grooves carved into the ground, like a ditch and a bank, right? Going in dead straight line. Then at the Stonehenge one, at least, you've got like a kind of a semicircular end on it, and there's a couple of mounds actually near both ends of it, and no one's really sure what they're all about. The cursus is a Roman word, means kind of racetrack or something like this, but that dates back at Stonehenge. That dates back to over 3,500 BC, which is technically nearly 1,000 years older than the stone circle. So you've got one here, which is interesting. There's also one in Dorset, which stretches through, Cranbourne Chase and not too far, and that's 7 miles long. So we're talking like, and so I can't believe there's one here. So what do you do? You think that this could push the dates back even further? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll just have a look at the LiDAR, mate, because you can see the cursors. Like, if you now look at, let's just take you through it so we know what we're looking at, right? That cigar-like thing, to the top left, that's your barrow, the long barrow. You can see it's pointing northeast, which is towards the summer solstice, sunrise, and then southwest towards the winter solstice, sunset. And then you can see what looks like tram lines, and they go off to the top left corner. That, when it goes I think I've got another slide, but that goes down and it flutes out, and exactly what you've just described as the Stonehenge cursors, two little edges, cambered in the middle, fluted in this case. It is what it is. It's not, I'll tell you what it's not the South Downs Way. Because the South Downs Way is near, but it takes the easy route. It winds around this cluster. This is a cursus. I don't know how old it is, but I do know that walking up and down it is really good. It feels like a processional walk to the Long Barrow. I mean, that's really what it feels like to me. And then next to it, right, this is really gets interesting. Excuse me. Next to it, we've got another 3 objects. So the one immediately adjacent to it with the dark shadow, that is what I believe. Okay. This isn't what the archaeological record will show you, but this is what I believe is where the dirt came from to build the Long Barrow, to build that round barrow that you can see below it, and then to the right of it, just to the right of it, another mound, right? Now, they've excavated this area right on top of the Long Man, and I think they call it a flint mine. Like, really, mate, what we're doing is we're just overturning the narrative now. Okay, we're just going to overturn the narrative. Okay, anyone, like, again, it's a flint mine. Like, I guarantee the person that said it was a flint mine hadn't slept on top of Windover Hill for one night, let alone 1 week, let alone 1 month, or let alone 1 year. Right? Right. Why do I say that? Because if you're on the top of Windover Hill or Windover Hill, for a start, it's windy, right? You're on the South Downs, you're on top of a hill. It's constant wind. The weather can change. Inclement 1 minute, sunny the next. What you need is shelter. And I believe that excavation that we're looking at is actually where they sheltered. When you were up there all night doing observations and waiting for the sun and doing this and doing that, you needed somewhere that wasn't on the escarpment. Because you just couldn't be, you'd die of exposure. Like, I've been up there before in full puffer jacket, mask, gloves, scarf. You can be extreme weather up there, right? So this is what I think. I don't think it's a flint mine. I don't think that's nonsense. I think it's actually somewhere that people used. They dug it out. They built what they wanted to build. They terraformed where they needed to terraform. And there's a lot of terraforming up there. For example, just the ridges of the the cursus I was talking about. And they used that dirt, but at the same time, they built somewhere they could shelter out of the wind. Because when you go down into that, you are out of the wind. Next slide here, mate. I just want to show you. This one is a better view of the cursus. I've actually put this one on purpose to show you the cursus. This is LiDAR, obviously. But you can see the cursus really clearly going to the top right there. And it kind of gets wider at the bottom, noticeably wider at the bottom than it is when you start walking down from it when you leave the Long Barrow. So that is an interesting feature. Cursus touching Long Barrow. Like you said earlier, where else do we get that? Stonehenge. There you go. And this, thank you for the photo, shows beautifully the round barrow, the shelter excavation I was talking about, and then you can see the Long Barrow there. And look at the commanding view. You know, they haven't just picked this spot for a laugh. They've picked this spot because the views are phenomenal. We haven't even talked about the natural beauty of the English landscape here and how that would add to it all. But this is one of the most amazing views you're going to get in Southeast England, if not the most amazing. You know, for Southeast England, I would challenge anyone to say, you know, there's a better view. So this goes into the whole sacred landscape, sacred area, sacred place, you know, where this is a whole other, this is all within the talk, but this whole thing just keeps we can keep unpacking it. And here are people, there's the lay hunters sheltering from the wind and having their picnic, because I do the tour of this area, Hugh, as you know. And I've taken a couple of groups up there now, and it's just been fantastic exploring this with other people, showing them what I've learned, showing them all the cool little spots, and having a true lay hunter picnic right there in this wonderful excavation, which is, when you're out there, you go down. That's why everyone's down there, because you're out of the wind. You know, they're actually down there, sitting there, having their packed lunch, because they're out of the wind, right? And you've got to think, back in the ancient world, there was wind and all the other weathers. And that's why I think that we've kind of been missold what this actually was, this particular feature of the landscape. And by living, or not living up there, but by going up there and being in the landscape and observing it and trying to put myself into the mindset of the ancients, mate, when it gets too windy, when you're at the top, that's where I want to go. If it's raining, that's where I'm going to go. You know, if we're waiting through the night for the sunrise, we don't want to be starting our walk. I can tell you now, we're not walking up from 3 o'clock in the morning, walking up there at night, trying to get up to the top so we can be there ready for the sunrise in the morning. No. We're sleeping up there the night. Yeah. And if we're sleeping up there the night, it's not just going to be us. It's going to be the community. There you go. Just ripping apart the archaeological narrative there. Okay, I think we've done that one for the solstice, mate. And I think we'll go to Equinox unless you've got any questions on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the fact you've got so many ancient sites in that area. I mean, there are a few others, right? I mean, I know you talk about this in the book and at the conference, but there are quite a few other sites stretching across the landscape, which kind of almost feels like it's, like a sacred ceremonial landscape. It's not just this one little area around the Long Man. And I think you might want to address that a little bit. And also I want to get into at some point the symbolism of the staff bearing God holding two staffs in his hand, because that's obviously something that we see in other places around the world. I know you've got into that. I know you've spoken to Richard Casaro, who's also a former Megalithomania speaker. It was written extensively on that particular subject. But before we do that, maybe we can look at the winter solstice, and then we can kind of go into the other alignments, which are even more stunning after that as well.
Well, yeah, okay. Sorry, what was the first question again? The landscape itself. That's right. You're absolutely right. Anyone can check this. You look at Andy Burnham's wonderful site, megalithic.co.uk, who I believe speaking this year as well, and zoom in on the Long Man, and you will just see it is littered with barrows, long barrows, wells, ponds, churches, priories. It's a sacred landscape. It's easily as concentrated for barrows as I'd say the Stonehenge landscape. They're all the way along the ridge of the South Downs Way. I've been to at least 6 or 7 barrows, long barrows, in the area, just in this immediate area as well. And it suggests that this was of great interest to the ancient people, this area. You know, it really does. It's a landscape that let's put it like this. In Australia, the indigenous people have what they call dreaming sites. I used to live near one, Mount Coolum. You've been there. And this isn't just the mountain, it's the whole area. The dreaming sites, the whole area. If we look at the Americas, you get into where this Fajidabut is and the Pueblo cultures and so on. They have what's called sacred initiatory landscapes. If you go to, what's the famous one? Sedona, Arizona, where we've both been. This is incredible. This is a sacred initiatory landscape. And it's like one of these, you know, when people go to Glastonbury in the UK and you're driving to Glastonbury and get into Glastonbury, you'll see the Tor for the first time. And it's like, oh, the Tor. You get this little rush. It's like you're entering the zone. That's what it feels like. You're going in and out of a zone that for many years has been revered by many different people and cultures. So with the Long Man and the landscape that surrounds the Long Man, I would say that starts. I mean, don't get me wrong, the South Downs are beautiful all the way along, right? They're beautiful. It's rolling, undulating, bucolic English landscape at its finest. But when you get to Lewis and you're coming towards the Long Man, if you're coming from the west, you go past this giant mountain that we now call Mount Caburn. And for me, this is when the sacred initiatory landscape starts. Right? It's like, it's this bit. Yeah. And as you come over the hill from Mount Caburn, you come down, you see Fell Beacon, which is another stunning hilltop in the area. And then you come on past the Fell Beacon, and then you come into the village of Wilmington, which is the quaint houses with thatched roofs and beautiful old buildings. And then you come to the Long Man, and then you're presented with the Long Man, which you can see from miles around. You know, you can see it from the main road, you can see it from the train, you can see it from the fields over in the Weald. It's a major landscape marker that, you know, is visible from everywhere. Second biggest in the world. See? So for me, we're talking about a landscape, and I'll borrow the term from the Native American indigenous people, that this is a sacred initiatory landscape in sleepy old Sussex. So, I mean, the other alignment I wanted to share with you in regards to the Long Man was the one that we've kind of been publicising, and was another incredible discovery back in 23 of the Equinox. I'm just going to go one slide forward though. I'll just show you this quickly. Winter solstice, just so you can see this. So winter solstice, I mentioned it earlier, but now you can see it. The Long Man at winter solstice and sunset, full shadow for the entire day. Not one ray of sunlight touches him. Okay? Summer solstice, full sun. Winter solstice, no sun.
So one of the most striking aspects of your discovery, Stuart, is the equinox. I think this is what is kind of surprised me. I mean, the solstices are interesting. I mean, the summer solstice, to witness that. But when you were there and you witnessed this during the equal night, equal day times of the year, that's when I think things just shifted. This is like, it's almost, you can see the way everything's been designed almost around this. So let's get into it. So what you got here to show us?
Thank you. Okay, Hugh. Yeah. So we just recap. We said it, didn't we? The sun, right. So let's just logically go with it. Summer solstice, full sun all day. Winter solstice, no sun. So what could happen on the equinox? Equal day, equal night. This is what happens. The Long Man's bisected in half. And the really, really, really interesting thing for this, for me, mate, right, is we didn't, like we said, sunrise, sunset, some of a little bit later in the day, some of it, right? This one happens at the local sunset on the autumn equinox. So a local sunset means when the sun leaves the area that you're in. It doesn't mean it's the red orb setting on the horizon, okay? So we just get clear with that distinction. This is at 4:44 p.m. And this is repeatable, year in, year out. Half the Long Man in sun, half the Long Man in shadow. So now, now we've got this on the equinox, no less, right? I mean, I'm just looking at it again now. I can't believe it. It's literally half of what you expect, isn't it? Like, and it happens just as the sun is closing out from this location. So the last part of the sun and the first bit of the shadow. It's just incredible, Hugh. I'm going to just go on another slide here because I'll read this bit out. Local sunset, autumn equinox. This is 22nd of September, 2023, 44. We discovered that as the last rays of sunlight leave the Long Man of Wilmington at 4:44 p.m, a remarkable shadow effect appears. a shadow cast from the Giant's Causeway, remember I mentioned that earlier, it runs along the top, merges with two separate shadows to form one straight, dark line that arcs across the figure's body and staves. So now we've got this is absolute, when you see this building, like now, when you're really studying it, right, and this took a couple of years to even get to the point where we're watching the shadows merge. There are three shadows that merge, and the three in Druidic lore and, you know, all sorts of, like, the Trinity is an interesting one in itself. They all merge and create this one shadow that forms a straight line. So we're now on the South Downs, which is known for being wavy and curvy, but we've got a straight line. And that straight line at 4:44 p.m. bisects the Long Man. So at this exact moment, the Long Man appears balanced between light and shadow, summer and winter, life and death. At the autumn equinox, the sequence begins around 4:30 p.m. when the separate shadows first merge into a single straight line. Now, if we remove some of the small trees and shrubs that are from what we call the egg shape, an even sharper line would be seen. So what I'm saying with that is it's not free of shrubs and trees, and they kind of make the line a little bit bouncy, but nevertheless, it's just, if they were gone, it would be a straight line, perfectly straight line. Okay. When the balance point is reached, right, that point we've just looked at, it can feel, and this is going to be personal, at least to the observer, as though everything is in perfect harmony. So it's like when we first, I was with a good friend of mine, Justin, and my daughter, when we all were there, and we were just looking at we didn't know what we were looking for this day. We were just down there at the equinox, as we are, and we were standing there and looking at it, and all of a sudden, it just hit us all at the same time, like, wow, look at it. That's it. It's completely bisected. Oh my God, look, it's just everything's perfect. It's just amazing. Oh my God, can you see that? It literally triggered something in us. Right? It was just an incredible. And since then, I've taken groups. The lay hunters came last year, and we'll get to that, which is mind blowing. And we'll get to that. But they came, they saw it, same thing happened. 4:44, boom, shadow, bisecting it. So, of course, conditions must be ideal. And sometimes we've missed the equinox shadow because we've been back in successive years to look at this. It's spring equinox, where it happens about an hour earlier. And then it can be rain, or it can be cloud, or, so you've got to have everything right to get this to happen. Don't think that you're going to go down the equinox, go to the Long Man, and it's just going to be clear for you. I mean, this goes back to the whole archaeoastronomical thing. You need everything perfect to get the alignment and to see it with your own eyes. We've both been to Stonehenge on the solstice. I've certainly been there, pouring with rain. So you don't see anything. You just see it getting lighter through the clouds. But anyway, incredible to see this. And at the moment of 4:44, this happens. But what else happens at 4:44 or thereabouts, or in that kind of window? Oh, yes. On the other side of the world, in Mexico, at the pyramid of Kukulkan, Chichen Itza, the shadow effect's happening and the serpent sliding down the pyramid at the same time. There's another coincidence, of course, but what a coincidence! What, you mean there's a shadow effect happening in sleepy old Sussex? Yeah. And there's a shadow effect happening on the other side of the world in Mexico? Yeah. Well, okay. It is what it is. There it is again. I've done a zoom in on that. You can see the line. And that's the moment. It's almost like top of the right staff and bottom of the left staff. And you know what even more gets me with this, Hugh? Look at the arms. Look at the arms. They're in the same angular direction as the shadow. I mean, again, is that another coincidence? Did the builders do that on purpose? I don't know. All I do know is that happens and you can see it and it's amazing. But to my eyes, and looking at it even deeper, it does appear that the actual design of the Long Man, which I go into in detail in my presentation, is actually, built around the shadow almost. And there's another one.
That is incredible, isn't it, really? I mean, I can't quite fathom that. I mean, there's just something about that. It's just like design. It's just designed, isn't it? It's clearly designed. I mean, that is just. I mean, it's difficult to comprehend. I've got to come and see that. I've seen the solstice, but I think this September I'm going to come down. I think we're planning this. We've been, talking about this already, and I mean, this needs to be kind of an annual event. This is like major. I mean, just to see that. How has no one noticed that though? I mean, you've got druids going there. You've got like people. It's been there. It's not like Karahan Tepe. When we discovered the winter, so that was buried for 10,000 years. This is like a whole. This is like it's been there all along, and you have just. I mean, it's more impressive in some ways because it's been waiting to be discovered out in the open. Going, hey, what's that? Look at me, and no one's really done it. I mean, you have people going there doing ceremonies. You have people going there into all this kind of stuff. So it baffles me how it's not been discovered. So we've got to give you kudos for that. I mean, that is remarkable. And I would imagine, with the slight movement, if it is thousands of years old, with the slight change, very slight change in the sunrise and sunset positions and things like that, it could have even been more precise. It could have just been at a slightly different angle to get an even more precise finish to it as well. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that is something to behold.
It really is. And like I say, the moment of, you see the ridge actually, just, this is a better image now we've zoomed out. You can see the Giant's Causeway along the top there, that pronounced line that runs along the top, right? That's man-made. Okay? That's causing the shadow. That straight edge along there. Okay, so again, when was the path that we call the Giant's Causeway? Who built that? And they just built it in a place where they got it to get a line going like that. Okay, so is this terraformed? What I'm saying is, you said it is terraformed. To give you this. We're in the South Downs. It's wavy hills. It's up and down. We got straight line. There's one where it's just forming. It's just coming in this shot. You can see it on the line. If you look at the arms though, it kind of follows the arms. We'll see this in a minute because I've got a sequence for you. But there's me in the field with Cass, and we're having a jolly old time, just waiting for like the next minute to happen when it touches. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, it's coming. Incredible. And that, like, there are different iterations of the Long Man. This is the current one. There are different iterations, which we can have a look at in a bit. But this is the current one. And this is what I say. All right, let's say that, the Long Man was 500 years old from the Tudor times because blah, blah, blah. All right. Doesn't matter. Remove that, right? The Long Man doesn't exist, right? So what? The people that built those barrows all aligned to the solstice, they never noticed this shadow. Is that what we're thinking? That they could build a barrow aligned to the summer solstice, but they would fail to notice this equinoctial shadow. You can't have it both ways. Right, let's have a look at this one. Now, this one, I believe, the first video, we'll play it and then I'll talk. That video was taken when the lay hunters, the network of lay hunters, came on a guided walk, 4-day walk we did, all the way around the whole sacred initiatory landscape, okay? 4 days. We had a brilliant time. We had the best weather, right? And I timed the walk, and it just so happened that the timing of their moot coincided on the Monday with the day of the equinox. So because I was organising the tour itinerary, I was liaising with Lawrence Main from the Lay Hunters, and we decided that the way I made the moot was this would be the last place. So we went all around the sacred landscape, and then we came to the Long Man on day 4. And that's how you really understand it, Hugh. You don't go straight, like I said to you, the sacred landscape, yeah? Well, you can go straight to the Long Man, of course. I wouldn't stop you. But if you go into the landscape around, and we went to Mount Caburn, we went to Firle Beacon, we went to all the churches, we went to the yew trees, all of it. So everyone was vibing, yeah? But the key moment, obviously, for all of us, as I've said on the itinerary, is 4:44. We're going to go to the Long Man and watch the shadow effect. All right? So everyone's vibed up for it. We're there. Probably the first group outside of my crew that, I've publicly shared this with in a kind of capacity where, I'm guiding people over the hill kind of thing, right? So maybe the first time a group in thousands of years has come to see this. Now, I want you to tell me what you think, right? So we're there as a group. Clear blue skies for the whole moot, right? You know where this is going, right? And we all get in position. And as you just saw with the video I played, the shadow was building lovely. And then it literally came to the bottom staff and then started going across it. And then I'm looking up in the sky, and the biggest cumulus clouds you've ever seen in your life, they look like that out of Star Wars. They were massive. We're just coming across the blue sky, Hugh. Right? We're all there. And I'm looking at it thinking, I'm looking at it because I want this tour to go well. But I can't control the weather, right? And I'm looking at it going, oh my God, that's going to block the sun out, because I can just see the shadows, moving across the landscape. These giant shadows out of nowhere, like maybe 4:15 or something, just drifting over, right? So we're there with the network of the lay hunters. We're all there waiting for 4:44. right? And literally, the 4:44 moment comes, the bisection happens, the lay hunters go, "Way!" Because this is a big symbol for them. This is, been part of the Dod Man and Alfred Watkins and the Lowell Straight Track and the Wilmington Lays. This has got history with the lay hunters, right? There's a massive cheer. Everyone's celebrating, right? At 4:45, one giant cloud came and literally obscured. Let that sink in. We saw the 4:44 alignment, right? We saw it. There was a cheer. Mission completed. And then the Long Man went, to just give you a little tick in the box to let you know that you have got it. Well done. I'm shutting it off there. I could have shut it off a minute before, or a minute. You know what I mean? It was like a divine thing, Hugh. It's a divine. I see it, and we all did at the time. It was like divine. Yeah, we didn't see it close out. Didn't matter. It told us 4:44. You've seen it. Bosh, gone into cloud. There was one cloud in the sky. I mean, literally one cloud, right? And this is why I was saying to you and the listeners as well. Don't think you're going to get perfect weather for every one of these, right? And in that instance, it was clear blue skies. It was beautiful. And then just one cloud came over and it obscured it. So that's why that one stopped. But we'll just look at this video, because what I did is I stopped the video because the rest of the video is just, you can't see anything. It's just shadow. There's no shadow, basically, because of the cloud. But this video, you'll see it close out. So I just paused it on the video on the point when it hit the 4:44 point, but you can see the closeout with that one. We've done that as a sequence of shots with an Android phone and a stick. So it's not the best quality, but you can still see the effect, start, middle, and end. Okay. So I know what you're thinking. And, there'll be people out going, whoa, this is a coincidence that, in the summer solstice, it's full sun. In the winter solstice, there's no sun. And then at the equinox, he's completely bisected in half. It must be a coincidence. Right? Yeah, it's a coincidence. Is it? Because in the morning, the same thing happens in reverse. It's literally unbelievable. So sunrise happens at 6 o'clock, 6:30, I think. But we don't get the sun onto the Long Man to around 9. Local sunrise, 9 a.m., right? So because, like we say, we sleep. I don't see people sleeping there the night. I've never met anyone who sleeps there. We do. And because we sleep there the night, we wake up and then we hang out and then we watch it happen in reverse. Now, this line is as straight as the other one. And again, I've put on there, removal of bushes and shrubs would enhance the shadow line. I mean, you don't know how tempting it is for me, but obviously I couldn't do that. But there's a couple, I know that if we got rid of a couple of them trees, we would have a perfectly straight line coming down the other side. So not only does it happen at sunrise and sunset, there you go. I mean, look at that. It's literally going top left pole, bottom right. I know there's a bit of a bulge around his midsection, but that is a tree. And if we got rid of that, it would be a nice straight line. And there's no need for a tree to be there, to be honest, because it's not, I like trees myself, but it does, it's just like a small shrubby type tree. So, we've put these together just after sunrise, just before sunset. So, is it more of it's another coincidence now, isn't it? Like sunrise, solstice, sunset, solstice, winter solstice is all in shadow, and equinox, that's local sunrise, it does this, and local sunset, it does that, right? On top of it, there's barrows. They're all aligned to the winter solstice and the summer solstice. This is a highly sophisticated tool for observing the solstices, equinoxes, cross-quarter days, and lunar standstills. I mean, highly sophisticated insofar as, without going into another kind of tangent pivot kind of thing, let's just say that the Long Man and its slope, as well as being local sunrise, horizontal sunrise, but also has midday and alignments, which is literally like a sextant. If you're familiar with a sextant and how that's used on a noon shot for navigation purposes, this is it. This is a similar thing, but in the landscape. So yeah, mate. There you have it.
No, that is. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, that is an impressive situation you've uncovered there. And again, I still can't believe it's not been spotted. I mean, not even a mention of it anywhere in any texts or literature. That's what's so incredible.
It's hidden.
So we're gonna, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, that bush is unfortunate, but you always get trees in the way nowadays. You can't really go up and cut it down or anything. But yeah, let's get into then. We'll have a little break, but let's get into, we've seen these alignments. I mean, I know there's more than this, which you're not going to put it all out there right now, but it just proves that this is like a clock, like a shadow sun clock carved into the landscape of ancient Britain, and I believe it's got the power of Stonehenge kind of going on here. This is what it really does. It's that profound, and this needs to be recognised. And I think getting the book out is the best move ever. Just 'cause it's got to be recognised as a genuine, valid alignment or alignments. It's just mind blowing. But yeah, let's have a little break. But then let's get into some of the symbolism as well, and we'll go back into some of this as well, because this is just mind blowing. The symbolism of the Long Man really gets me. It's always fascinated me because it's a symbol. You have this relationship with other places around the world. We've got the Tiwanaku image here of the sun god, associated with the similar staff holding figure, but that's the tip of the iceberg, really, isn't it? I mean, there's also there's this Dodman idea as well, that the the early lay hunters came up with. That these were like surveying sticks. They could also be represented as measuring sticks as well. They could be things you place in the ground for shadow. So you're recording the shadow. So astronomical principles possibly associated with it. But the fact is, I mean, I know you've spoken to this gentleman, Richard Casaro. He's done a whole book, I think, about this. He's done a whole series of videos and articles and everything else about this sun god mythology and symbolism. And it's just, to me, it's so fascinating that the Long Man is really the only, or the most major one here in Britain. So let's talk a bit about this. Obviously, we've got Tiwanaku here. We've got the Gateway of the Sun. This gateway was actually moved from Pumapunku originally. It was originally, for some reason, it was moved over. There's several of these gateways, but this has got this amazing image of this kind of figure carved in the top with sun rays kind of coming off its head, which is almost like serpents as well, with these two staffs. So let's get into it. So what is going on with this staff god symbolism, Stuart?
Well, this is one of these synchronous chain of events, because as you said, my own researches just led me to the gateway of the sun, T1 Arku. And, you know, when you're looking at it, what are we looking at? Like, there's a guy holding two staffs whose arms are the same kind of angle as the Long Man. And behind his head, you've got a load of solar rays. So, I mean, it's called the gateway of the sun. So this symbol of staff holding is ancient. And even in some images, as we'll look at in a minute, it might not necessarily be staffs, but holding something in either hand. So we're going to talk about symbolism, which is, I think it goes back to your question in the previous segment about, you know, no one's clocked what's going on at the Long Man. And that's because of symbol literacy. And I like to think that my symbol literacy is pretty good. So for me, sun all day, no sun, half sun, it just speaks for itself. Okay. Now, if you take two staffs, interestingly, right, and I've physically done this, you can do it at home. Get two staffs, put one down there and one down there. You become the third point. You're balanced. You're physically balanced. Never mind spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, never mind that. Physically, you are now the strongest you can be on the floor. If you've got two staffs and you're holding them, and I come and try and push you over, you'll be able to resist it. Okay? You're balanced. Balance. Balance comes up a lot. So then we look at the duality of the staffs. Sun and moon, male, female, up and down. Sun and, you know, it goes on and on and on. So this particular motif is said to have rays radiating, solar rays radiating from its head, from his head. So a balance between the sun. We could look at it like that. Let's move on one. I'm going to read this bit. The staff god was a basic iconography shared by cultures of pre-Columbian Peru, particularly those occupying the northern coast and southern highlands. This is seen as in the stylistic uniformity of the icons and representations, which suggested widespread adherence. Yeah, widespread, really widespread. Right? The staff gods among these Andean cultures. However, it was often portrayed as a deity, apotheosis, with hands always holding instruments of power. For instance, an artifact found in Chavin de Junta showed the deity holding a spondylus and strombus shell, which are female and male symbols. Right. There's that balance again. Female and male. So as you alluded to earlier, Richard Casaro, who's done a talk at Megalithomania, and I would recommend everyone go and watch that talk, you know, after you've watched this one. And he is the Don, as far as I'm concerned, of staff gods. So, you know, full credit to Richard, because in 2013, as he says in his own, or 2011, sorry, in his book Written in Stone, he discovered that these staff-wielding icons were found all over the world. And he says, from the Egyptians to the Assyrians, the pre-Incas to the Europeans, the icon is ubiquitous. It is the lost symbol of a forgotten golden age religion that flourished globally in the remote past. How can it not be? And I agree with him. I agree with him, because when you start looking at it, it's another one of them. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And this is one of Richard's slides to show the point. Here we are in Bolivia and then in Turkey. And we've got this motif above a doorway holding on it, holding something in either hand. Same religious icon above doorway. And then Richard's knocked the ball straight out of the park, because now look, Peru, Afghanistan. I mean, look at the Egyptian one. He's holding two poles. Colombia, Bolivia, we've seen again. There's Egypt, kind of two things in there. North America holding two poles. Sumer holding two poles. Italy holding two poles. Lebanon, China, India, like Indonesia, look, holding two poles. Peru holding two poles. Nigeria, look at the guy from Nigeria. I mean, he's literally like the Long Man. And when I found Richard's work, which is through your wonderful website, Hugh, I was literally blown away, because he presents these slides in a way that when he got to the last one at Megalithomania, I can't remember the year, but it was a few years ago, the last slide that he had amongst all of these icons that he calls the God Self icon was the Long Man of Wilmington. So I was watching one of your Megalithomanias, and then Richard Casaro's talking about this, and I was like, oh my God, there's my Bolivia one. And Richard's just knocked it all completely and blown my mind even more. Like, the Long Man isn't just some random figure on the hill. It goes right back to the ancient world. Pre-ancient world. So when we're talking about dating earlier on and all that business, I mean, this for me, I can't even go there, to be honest. We're talking about ancient religious icons that look at balance, harmony, left and right, male and female, sun and moon, internal balance, psychological balance, your relationship with nature. So yeah, check out Richard's website. Thanks for letting us use those, Rich. I'll see you at Meg. And we'll just go back to the Long Man again, because the site is steeped in ancient history and folklore. And as I said earlier, there's different interpretations of his appearance. Now, these are only the ones that we know about, because, pieces of paper have survived that long that someone sketched them down, right? But we've got to draw. This is the oldest one that I found. It was 1710. It looks like me in the morning, actually, but there he is with the poles. And then 1776. Now you can see here we've gone to scythe and rake. This is you only got this one. It's still there. And then another interpretation. You see the feet in this one are going in one direction. The paths, the poles aren't necessarily straight. But these are just interpretations that people, artists or antiquarians have jotted down when they passed the Long Man. And these are the ones that have survived. And we are where we are today with what it looks like today. But irrespective of what type of form was on that hill, there were still the shadows going across it. And then this one, the Fingalsham buckle. Now, this was found not too far away in Kent. And again, after you've looked at Richard Casaro's work, and let's be clear about this. Other researchers and academics have, they have noticed the similarity between the staffs of the Long Man and the Fingalsham buckle. I would just go one stage further and say those discs are the sun and moon next to his head. So the Fingalsham buckle was found in southern England, literally a stone's throw away from the Long Man of Wilmington. So this symbol's been going around a long time. And I believe...
You go back? Yeah. Can you just jump back a slide quickly? I just want to just to the Richard Casaro one, because... Yeah, sorry, I've got to just mention this before we go too far away from it. We can get back into what you were saying, Stuart, in a minute. But some of these symbols on here are what are known as the masters of animal symbols, or master of animal symbol. And so often they're depicted as animals, different types of animals, this, that, and the other. And there's even in southeast Turkey, there's a site called Sayburç, which has got astronomical connotations in its name and everything else. Dates back over 11,000 years old. And that, some people are saying, the symbol there on the main narrative carved scene in one of the enclosures is that of a master of animals. Again, so we're sort of seeing some of the symbolism possibly going that far back. Now, he hasn't got two, he's got two animals coming at him from either side while he's there holding his phallus. He's not holding staffs as such. But then you've got another figure who appears to be jumping, holding a sort of possibly a serpent or a bola or something in his hand as well, which is kind of odd. So I'm not saying it's the same, but it's you've got the master of animals symbol in some of these. That is now being pushed back quite a long way as well. But yeah, forgive me. Please carry on what you were saying.
Well, I mean, that's fine. I just you're absolutely right. These figures, they're not all holding poles. They're all holding, different animals or different implements or tools in their hands. The point being, though, that this is all over the world. We're finding this all over the world. These symbols in the ancient world, and from my understanding of it, the Long Man, I believe, would have been in some form or other, some motif or other, on the side of that hill for a very long time. And let's not forget the site that the Long Man is situated in amongst the South Downs with the Cuckmere River. There's actually another petroglyph further down the valley of a horse called the White Horse of Litlington. And at that point, that is what I have called the gateway to England, because it's high up on one of the downland ridges. It's very, very steep. There's a beautiful chalk horse carved on the hill. There's a massive round barrow just sitting there. And strategically, militarily, you need to have this site because you've just got a command of the entire valley, which leads up to the Long Man. I mean, we haven't really even touched on the rest of the valley, where it becomes even more mystical, if that's possible. But I'm just seeing this as being an entranceway into the area of the Long Man, but from the ocean, from the sea. So, in an age where these cultures we're looking at now were traveling by boat and traveling around, it's not a million miles away that they could have come in up the Cuckmere River. Oh, look, that's a good place to do it. We'll just whack one up there. It's not out of the realms of possibility, because it is very near the ocean. There is the Cuckmere Valley. So you can see this is a serpentine valley. And I would say this would be an entry point to the country in the ancient world. And just up from here, Long Man. And all over that landscape you're looking at now, it's all full of barrows, tumuli, springs, wells.
So yeah, that's fascinating to see these connections, you know, this symbolism, which clearly is super ancient, is pretty mind-blowing. And I think it's fascinating that you've come across the work of Richard Casaro, you know, because, you know, we've known about him for a long time. We've followed his work. He spoke at Megalithomania, I think 8 years ago or something like that. And yeah, his stuff is really quite spectacular, to be honest with you. But not as spectacular as what we're looking at now, where you have this shadow effect occurring in the Sussex landscape, which you can go and see for yourself. And this is something you do, isn't it, Stuart? You take people out there. I'm going to be there at 4:44 p.m. this autumn equinox. So if anyone wants to come along, we'll sort it out, because I know Stuart does official kind of group tours there and things like that as well. And he's got your website and obviously the book. So let's have a little look at what you've got coming up, and let's have a look at the book as well.
Okay, mate. So yeah, just an invite going out to anybody who wants to see this. You know, this needs to go. Like I think you mentioned earlier, like this is an event. This is the Stonehenge of the East. You know, this is equinox. This is solstice. This is winter. So yeah, if anyone wants to come and see it, come along and see it. You know, fingers crossed you'll get the weather and not the cloud. And it's an amazing thing to witness. So yeah, we're doing that. I do once or twice a year a walk, and we can go deep on the walk where we really explore all the little nooks and crannies around. And that's quite amazing to go and do that. I really enjoy that. It's only small groups normally, and it just means I'm sharing kind of my knowledge of the area with people that are into this kind of thing. You know, we can go quite deep, and there's so many amazing spots around now that when you actually visit them and you start getting the vistas and the energy of the place, it really is it really changes you inside. So this was one of the groups we took up there, and they're on top of the barrow, on top of the hill there, just chilling out in the sun, having a nice time. And there we are, one of the groups. That was the Society of Lay Hunters a few years ago. The Long Man there. And then, yeah, Hugh, the book. We've got so much more in the book. I've gone into the landscape and the barrows and the solstices and the equinoxes and our discoveries at Imbol and Samhain and all the other little bits and pieces that make up this landscape, which, you know, I've said it before, I believe is a sacred initiatory landscape. And why I say that is because of just my own personal journey in going there, insofar as the initiation, if you like, is one of self. You know, this isn't some guru or some, you know, meditational technique, or this is just yourself and yourself engaging with the land in nature. You know, you could strip away all the archaeology and all the astroarchaeology and the effects and the solstice. You could remove all of that. Still, it is an amazing place to visit. And still, you know, many people, I was speaking to an old farmer up in Bo Peep, he's lucky enough to have one of the farms right on top of the hills. And he said to me in his best Sussex accent, "It's beautiful up here, clears the mind." And I thought about that, and I thought you're right, because the view, the vistas, and the sense of openness and sky. And we're very lucky because the South Downs are also a dark night zone. So stargazing is incredible, especially for the UK. You can actually see, we've almost seen, I'm pretty sure, the Milky Way, and, the glare is very less here, and the sky is very dark, especially for the southeast. And it is a wonderful place to just experience in day, in night, at full moon, at sunset, at the golden hour. The whole area, the Long Man's a focal point, shall we say, an omphallus, but the whole area is just amazing. And I would, recommend anybody come to Sussex. They could even hit me up via the website, or we could arrange something. And, I enjoy taking people into this landscape and sharing it with them. So, yeah, the book, for those of you that want to get into it more, this is my first book. This is the first edition of it. I'm sure there's going to be updates that are going to come, because we're finding out more and more as the years progress. But you've got everything in there that I've kind of learned over the past 20 years about living in this area, and also living overseas, and putting those experiences together, and then analysing and synthesising, and then seeing, yes, we have got something here in sleepy old Sussex, and it's actually massive. It is actually massive. I'm just looking at the book cover now and thinking, blimey, we took that photo. I can't even believe it myself. It's just so cool. It is cool. If you're into that kind of thing, I suppose, yeah.
And didn't I take that photo on the back cover just the other day?
Well, that's the stone, isn't it? The one you said?
Yeah. That's the one in Gosfawr Stone Circle in Wales. We were up there recently. Excellent.
Yeah, that was such a good trip, mate.
Yeah. So, Stuart, this is amazing. I'm like blown away that you've got this book together. This is insane. This is awesome. I mean, I'm so happy to see this. Can you show me the book in your hand? Put it up to the screen, please. I want to see it. Because that is just to have that, to get a book together like this takes time, it takes effort, it takes diligence. You got to get everything together. I know you've had Giles Bryant, give him some credit here. He's been working on it with you to kind of get it
without Giles, this wouldn't have happened. Giles
he's been like behind the scenes. Yeah, big love to Giles, great work, and I was honoured to write the images. Yeah, I was honoured to write the foreword for it as well. Yeah, we had Emily doing the images. It's a great piece of work. I've read it from cover to cover. I wrote the foreword for it, and I really want to promote this because I think it's a major discovery, but it's also the story of how it was all discovered, and the implications of it are huge, in my opinion. I think this is going to be a big story, and I think there's going to be, like, the press are going to get onto this, like the media is going to really get onto this, and I think we should maybe push that, for the autumn equinox, and get them to come along as well, because they need to witness this, because this is on par with Stonehenge, this is on par with the Karahan Tepe alignment. I mean, because it's so astonishing. It's been there all along, it's not been hidden. It's not like someone's covered it up, and you couldn't see it. It's been there, but no one had the insight to actually take the time to observe, witness, and record it like you have. So congratulations, Stuart. I really feel this is a big deal, and I'm really, really delighted. You're at Megalithomania to launch the book. The book's now out. It's available. You can get it, and I guarantee we already know there's going to be updates. I know you've been making discoveries even over this whole Beltane period, amongst other things. So things will progress, I'm sure. And I want to, thank you, Stuart, for putting all this work together. Absolutely epic. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for watching. We appreciate you taking the time out to look at this. But honestly, I think it's worth the time, worth the effort, and definitely got to get the book. So we're just going to finish up here. Stuart, is there anything you just want to add before we close up?
I'm a very open gentleman, and people have got any questions, or if they want to come on a tour, contact me through the website we've got, which is the Long Man of Wilmington.com. Little box on there. You can just send a message through and we can talk on email. So I'm always keen. Also, we're putting together a book, the Archaeoastronomical one. So, that could be good. Anyone who's out there in the field, we're actually building a book which is going to have all the photos like this of as many sites as we can in the world. So, that could be a good one, Hugh. If anyone wants to share any images and get them in the book. But yeah, it's been a delight. Thank you for, having me on your show. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. And good luck with the Megalithomanias. And all you people out there, if you want to get the book, go ahead and get the book. And yeah, I'll see you at the Equinox, 4:44 for the shadow.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. I appreciate that. This Archaeoastronomy project, which is starting to build, I do recommend people, if you've got images, if you've got stories and you've witnessed things yourself, Stuart is going to be open to be receiving and building up this database for this book. So we're going to do another interview, because we have not even covered everything. There's a lot more in the landscape that Stuart's been uncovering, and I know there's a lot more. I've read the book. I kind of know Stuart. I've been looking at his work as it's progressing, and so we didn't want to put everything in. We're going to there's a lot more to share, so we'll do a follow up to this, probably going up to near the equinox, maybe before or after that, so we can go to another level with this. But I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank Stuart for his time. Thank everybody involved in the Megalithomania conference where Stuart launched the book. And yeah, we've got a lot more interviews like this. You can check them out at the links below. And please make sure, if you can, just to kind of give a little 5-star button push on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that. It really helps the algorithm. And again, similar on YouTube, if you can, we'd appreciate that. And we'll keep you up to date. But remember, check out the longmanofwilmington.com and Stuart's work there. And we'll see you next time, Megalithomaniacs.